Little India, or the Gerrard Indian Bazaar, is it's amazing. It's a little world unto itself. It is definitely an example of why Toronto can be quite magical. You get on a streetcar, you go across town, you're in a whole new place with a whole new feel. It's the Gerrard Indian Bazaar, but it's North Indians, South Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Sri Lankans. It's its own little multicultural area. Most of the restaurants are, specific in their style in terms of, region. And I know, it's the restaurant that tends to have the name rather than the chef. The one restaurant that always sticks out of my mind, just because it is so big, is the Lahore Tikka House. And I don't know if it's renovations or if it's purposely, it's just massive.
So my name is Gulshan Alibai Sayani, and I currently run Lahore Tikka House. It's been almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years November 6th. That's when my husband passed away 4 years ago, and that's kind of when I started managing Lahore Tikka House. Elner actually came from Kampala, Uganda. He came as a refugee at the age, I believe he was 16 years old, and it was 1972. We went from Kampala to London, England. When he was about 17 years old, he's saying, you know what, I need to go out on my own and I want to go to Toronto. So he came to Toronto, a penniless teenager, and started selling corn on the streets. Other people started catching up onto it, and so there was a little bit of competition going on, but they would come back to Elner because it wasn't only about him selling corn, but it was also his charisma, just the stories that he told people, how he was able to engage people. So he did really well with that, and that helped him start his first business, which was Lahore Tikka House. So my husband saw this location, which used to be a Kentucky Fried Chicken. It was kind of outside of the strip of Little India, but Elner was a risk taker, and he said, I think this is going to work. As the restaurant was growing and growing, there was a lot of resistance from a lot of the neighbors in the area. That's why it took him 7 years to build the restaurant. He actually had trailers outside because he couldn't finish the building, and he had to keep the restaurant open because he had to pay the contractor. So people used to eat in the trailers for almost 5 years. But people loved the experience because it wasn't so much about the facade of Lahore Tikka House, but it was all about the food. So the recipes, actually, Elner had gotten a chef from Pakistan, from Lahore, and he brought the chef over. So Elner didn't do the cooking per se. He was more of really being able to engage with customers. He made customers feel like this was their second home. So he did more of that piece, managing, and he had chefs from Lahore who came here. How Elner kind of made his mark in Little India is his kebabs. He took a lot of love in making those kebabs. They have a lot of herbs in it. It's got mint in it, it's got garlic, it's got ginger, it's got chilies. So it's really flavorful kebabs, and then we make it fresh when you order it, and it's put onto the tandoor, so it's got a smokiness. The second step that he did was he put it on a sizzler, so when it comes to you, it's sizzling with onions and everything. So it's not only just about the way it tastes, but also in terms of visually, it kind of hits your senses in all ways, the smell, the touch, the hearing of the sizzling, and I think that people really like that.
The uniqueness of Little India compared to neighborhoods like Little Italy or Koreatown is that it all started with a business, in this case, a movie theater.
Often people kind of conjugated around movies because there wasn't really much more to do in the South Asian community at that time, and this was in the early 1970s.
So once the Nas Theater opened, very quickly you see restaurants as well as a little bit after fabric and sari shops.
So it was a place where you could kind of let your hair down and feel South Asian, having a theater, having a sari shop, having some grocery stores, and then having, the restaurants, and that's kind of how Little India began.
Other neighborhoods in Toronto started with the community moving into the residential housing, and then once you have people living in the neighborhood, you have businesses that open to serve this local population. While in Little India, you have businesses attracting people from the entire GTA even internationally from the US. So it's much more of a regional catchment than a local catchment. And that's really unique to the neighborhood. Since people were not living in the neighborhood, they had to travel to Gerrard Street. And so that really creates tensions around parking and festivals indeed.
There was a lot of racism, and I think it took them a long time to actually even name the street, the Indian Bazaar. There was a lot of backlash that I even know when Alner was building Lahore Tikka House. It took about 7 years to build because there was so much backlash from the community. Some of the merchants have moved to Brampton, to Mississauga. There's a huge population there as well. But I find that there are a lot of anchor stores here, like Trend and Fashions, like New Creation, some of the restaurants like Udaipur. So they're still here, and there is a market still here in Toronto.
There's probably two Hakka restaurants in downtown, and one of them is Hakka Wow. We are not only the newest kid on the block, I think we bring the synergy back in Gerrard Street. Over the years, the people have been closing down stores and moving away, and when I got here, there was an opportunity, this Toronto as a whole was missing Hakka food.
Food cultures and cuisines don't evolve in a bubble. It's always about interactions. So it would seem very logical to me to open a Hakka restaurant in Little India. This is food that the Indian Chinese community may be craving, but this is also a food that people who grew up in India, in New Delhi, for instance, may also be craving because they used to eat it there, right?
Before we go into Hakka food, it's a breed of people, Chinese people who left China before Mandarin, before Cantonese people, before Fujian people.
So you have Chinese communities all across Asia, and in India they've developed this specific cuisine.
They mingle with other culture, and they mix the other culture with Chinese food. The most popular Hakka food is Indo-Chinese Hakka food. Hakka food from Taiwan would be very much different than Hakka food from India. Hakka food here that we have over here is different from the traditional Hakka food, but at the same time we have kept the roots, as well as we brought in additional Hakka food from India, from Taiwan. Wherever Hakka people have gone, we took that taste and brought it over here in a little store like this. People welcomed our food. They welcomed our taste, the taste that we have created. First day we opened up, there were people lining up to try the food. We've been going strong ever since,
There are some new businesses, but I think it's still thriving. I think that the population is probably younger. The wave of immigration happened much later than some of the older neighborhoods, like Little Italy, like Chinatown. So it's just in a different phase, and I think that the East End is also in a different phase of development, gentrification, whatever you want to call it.
People only think, Gerrard Street is the only Indian bazaar. No, it's not. It had changed, and it's still evolving. The culture has, the different cultural things are coming back to Gerrard Street.
I think the right question about whether it's important that they keep their character, the question is, it's important to who? So is it important to the community? Is it important to Tourism Toronto, or to the city, who would like to sort of have this image of a multicultural city? And for people traveling to Toronto, it's easier to sell a multicultural city than multicultural suburbs. It's easier to see and tour. So there's a lot of stakeholders and a lot of people that are invested in these neighborhoods remaining identified with a community.